So it all kind of started in 2003. It's when we started dating, and early on in our dating, we talked about our family, and if we had a family one day, how would we grow our family? And we both kind of came to this idea that we loved the idea of adoption. My father passed away when I was 7, and when he passed away, we moved back to my mom's hometown, and there was 3 men within that city who made a conscious decision to not allow me to grow up without knowing the things that a young man needs to know. And so they decided that they would show me those things. And so watching them help raise a fatherless son really later in life put a passion in me to help in that same way by adoption.
My motivation to adopt came during college. I did a study on human development and the effects of being orphaned, but more so that hit me the effects of being unloved, and how devastating that can be physically to a child, obviously, as well as emotionally and spiritually. And I knew one day I had to help those children. So it has been a passion of mine since then.
So then we started going to Bulgaria as a married couple. Our first international mission trip, one of our first things we did as a married couple in general was we headed off to this country called Bulgaria. We went there and we went to this orphanage. We were one of the few religious organizations allowed these orphanages because we partnered with Create a Smile Ministries, which did surgeries. And so when we got in there, we just started seeing these conditions and seeing these children. God continued to pour our hearts forward, but it wasn't until later when we were there we met a girl by the name of Gospodinka. Gospodinka just was drawn to us, and we were to her. We actually honestly thought that God had called us to adopt Gospodinka, and when we started down that journey, we realized that wasn't going to work. And so we asked ourselves, then why did we even start this? And God kind of revealed to us that it was so that we would actually begin the process of adoption. And so we moved away from the idea of Bulgaria. So we knew that we wanted to do adoption. We didn't know where that fell in the growing of our family. And so when we started looking at growing our family, God kind of revealed to us to start with adoption.
We were praying a lot about which would be first, and then God revealed to me Romans 11:16, which talks about if the first dough of the batch is given in a gift of first fruits, then the whole batch will be holy. And so we trusted that if we chose to adopt before biological children, that God would bless our family as a whole. There wasn't really anything magical about the next step. We were younger and we hadn't been married for more than 7 or 8 years, so we didn't qualify for most countries. So by the power of elimination, we were narrowed down to 3 or 4 countries. And so we did some research based on why the children there were orphaned. And we prayed really hard about which story touched our heart the most. And the South Korea program is what really ended up being where we landed, because it was about people. It was women. It was unwed mothers. It was oppression. It was children that were literally not wanted, and that was heartbreaking. So that's where we started.
So we started the process with South Korea. We had some friends who had adopted from there. We kind of knew the process probably better than the average person because we knew some people. And at the time, the process was just moving. It was taking people from beginning to end about a year and a half.
Yeah, closer to a year.
Closer to a year to get through that process. And so we began our journey.
The month we finally submitted our application, they passed an adoption law in Korea, which completely turned the program upside down. It changed everything about how the program was run, how the children are surrendered, how they become eligible for adoption, and how they're matched with families. The process came with an unbelievable, unfathomable amount of barriers. I mean, it was shut down at points because children were murdered. I mean, like, it was crazy to see the change, and our social worker just kept talking about how she'd never seen anything like this. So it was an uphill battle we weren't ready for. So we have all of our paperwork in, and we've waited about 6 months on a referral, and we have no timeline of when it's going to come because everything has changed so much. So every time your phone rings, you're just on your edge. So the agency calls, and they tell me that they have big news to share, but my husband has to be with me when they tell me. Well, lo and behold, Ben is in Bulgaria.
So I'm in this Roma village with Dinko, and all of a sudden, his phone rings. And the amount of numbers that come across the screen is not the normal amount of numbers. And he answers it, and it's Cassidy. And I still to this day don't know how much that phone call actually cost us, or how you got his number correct. But she had called his Bulgarian cell phone number on our cell phone number and said, Ben has to get somewhere that he can get on the phone. So I leave our team in Stefko's hands, Dinko's brother, and me and Dinko go back to the hotel. I get on a Wi-Fi phone and wait for a group call from Cassidy and the agency.
So after 14 hours of coordination and getting it all together, we finally get on the phone, both of us with the agency, and they're telling us that they're closing and they are switching our file to someone else. So we've spent 14 hours in anticipation of a sweet child, but no, it was just another barrier. And they switched our file to another agency, and we had to start our paperwork over again.
So now that year to year and a half process turned into a 3-year journey. There was moments where we were trying to turn around paperwork as quick as they could give it to us because it was all changing. There was other moments where we were just sitting there wishing we could do something, but we couldn't. And we just kept clinging to scripture, clinging to community, clinging to worship songs, and just clinging to this idea that in the midst of our waiting, God was working. And so about 18 months into that process, I pull into the driveway and I see Cassidy there. And I could just tell by the look on her face that we'd gotten a match.
So I got the chance to tell him we had our match, and it was so exciting. And me being not the technologically savvy person I am, I couldn't actually open the file to look at it. So I had known for a few hours, but I didn't really have any more information other than to tell him. So thankfully Ben rescued us, and he came in and opened the file, and we were able to read about Kai. He was 9 months old, and he's cute as a button. And we knew right away. I mean, the minute we saw this picture, we knew he was our son. We're excited about having our match, and we know that there's a round of paperwork to do with it. But as we're preparing to do it, we find out that the agency that's in our home study is no longer eligible to work for Korea. So we have to do a whole nother home study. And we are on a very tight timeline here. We didn't have very long to turn it around. So that's when we became parents. We started fighting for it. I called social workers at midnight, asking them if they had finished things. We really had to work hard for that and to press forward through it.
At this point, we did it with just a different excitement, more ambition than ever, because we had a face and a name and a child in mind. And so we worked really hard to make sure that we could get him home as soon as we could. We didn't want to wait another day without him.
So then the exciting part happened. We had showers, and we got to go register, and we got to nest. We painted our nursery and bought a crib, and all those exciting things that started to make it feel more real and more like a normal parenthood journey.
Then we packed our bags. We packed our bags as we got a call. There was time for us to travel. And so we got everything together. It took a 17-hour flight to Korea. And we were going to land in country, and we had to stay there a week. But during that week time, we could only see our son for 2 one-hour sessions. So even though we were a block or 2 or 3 away from him, we couldn't even spend time with him. And so that made it tough, but it was just exciting to be able to meet him, to see him, and he was better than we could have ever imagined. So the first time we meet Kai, we actually went to his foster mom's apartment. Now, I'll never forget that. We drive there with our social worker, and we pull up and we park the van and we walk up this flight of stairs, and we're just excited. And we walk through the doors, and when you walk in the door, you have to take your shoes off. And I kick my shoes off and turn the corner, and I see our son sitting there. But Cassie didn't get to experience that because she decided that she would wear these knee-high zip-up boots. And so she gets there and has to take them off and delay the process of seeing him. But she gets them off, and then we get to go in there, and it was everything I could have imagined. I mean, he was just sitting on the floor, waiting, it seemed like, for us. And we get in there, and we all sit on the floor. They didn't have any furniture. She had a TV, no couches, no anything like that. She pulled up a small table, and that small table had a little sweet roll on it, and we sat on her floor, and she began to tell us about Kai. And Cassidy is a way better person at detail, and so I just pick him up, and I immediately just start playing with him and just knowing that he's mine already, making the most of that moment. And Cassidy's doing a very important job, and that is learning his habits, learning his ways. The foster mom was very insistent that we learn those things, how he slept well, what he liked to eat, and all those details. So we walked through those. And then eventually Cassidy looked, and I think she got a little jealous of the time I was spending with Kai, and she asked to hold him. This moment will forever be embedded in my brain. And so I hand him over, and the second that, literally within 5 seconds that he goes in her arms, he passes out asleep. I think he just found comfort. I think that there was this inward peace that God had given him with us. And so, he fell asleep, and she held him the rest of the time asleep. And then we had to go, and we laid him on a little mat that the foster mom pulled out as he finished his nap. We gave him a kiss as he was asleep, so he never saw us leave, which I never thought about that, actually. He didn't see us leave that day. And so then we go back to our hotel.
I was particularly nervous about meeting him the second time because you do it at the agency in a room, and they tried to do this model where they progressively remove the foster mother from the room because we are essentially strangers to him. Although we feel connected to him, he's still learning us. And I can remember the foster mom just handing him to us and putting us in the room and shutting the door.
Yeah.
And after a moment of panic, is he going to freak out? Is he going to be okay? He was fine. It was so amazing. We heard story after story about that they went the whole hour without touching their child or hugging their child, or the child cried in the absence of the foster mom. But there was just this peace in the room, and it was palpable. It was amazing. We played games. We got to feed him. We got lots of snuggles. It was so beyond what I could have ever expected and what we had prepared for. It really left us with just this richness of certainty and knowing that this is exactly how it's supposed to be.
So while in Korea, outside of the 2 opportunities we got to see Kai, the other big thing we had to do while there was to actually go to court in order for the judge to rule that we were able and capable of raising Kai. And so we did that. And then we did probably the toughest part of this journey, and that's we got back on a plane and flew home, not knowing when we would go back to get Kai. We were home, just waiting, had a bag packed, ready to go. Nursery was set, and we were just excited and waiting next to the phone for a phone call. So after 4 weeks of waiting, we got a phone call. It seemed like forever, but when they called, it was worth it. And they said, "Listen, I hope you didn't unpack your bags. We need you to head back to Korea." And so we bought those last second plane tickets, and we did.
Oh my gosh, it was a hot mess from there. We get to the airport. We're flying to Atlanta first. Our plane takes off and then immediately lands. And they don't know how long it'll be delayed. And I start to come apart. And then Ben grabs the stewardess by the shoulders and was like, you have to get us on the next plane or we're going to have a situation on our hands with my wife. And so she did. She called the captain and they quietly escorted us off the plane, and the rest of the plane was very angry because they were told they couldn't leave. And they just walked us one gate over, and that plane was leaving for Atlanta as well.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Trip 2. Next time you see us, we'll have Kai with us, bringing him home. See ya.
Transportation.
So we got to Atlanta and we made it in time for our connection, and we were thrilled. We had to book it through the Atlanta airport though. We were those idiots that were running, and my skirt was tucked in to my leggings. It was mortifying. And so, did you remember that? It was horrible. So then we get on our plane and we get settled, and it's a long flight. We watch movies, we enjoy ourselves, and then we get there and it is frigid cold, and they lost our bags. And so we had 30 hours with no bags, and it was like 3 degrees there or something. So we were trapped in our room and we were hungry.
I mean, it was so cold, and we were so unprepared by wearing our airport clothes that like we couldn't get out to get food. Like we felt like we would freeze. So we lived off of like the concessions in the hotel for 30 hours. So they deliver our bags.
Yeah.
So now it's time to take custody. We go to the agency, and we actually go over to a Starbucks close by first, and we sit there and sit across from each other. Last time that we will sit across from each other without having our son in our custody, and just talk about what we think it's going to be, start dreaming about what he'll be and what life will be like. And nervous and excited, we walk back over and walk up to get on the elevator, take it up to the 3rd floor, and open the doors and sit there waiting, just waiting for him to pull in. And then I'll never forget, this little pink stroller gets pushed in, and we see the foster mom, and we see him, and he's dead asleep wearing this little blue outfit, and Cassidy picks him up. And I remember that moment thinking, like, that's it. Like, you don't ever have to put him back down. Like, that's your son. We don't have to give him back. We don't have to wait. We don't have to do another piece of paperwork it might have. But in my head, like, that was our son at that moment. He was with us, and he wasn't going anywhere else. And so we go in there and we talk through some things, and then they say, hey, before we send you home and before we send you to your hotel, he still needs some shots. So we're going to take him from you. Right that moment I just said, you never have to let him go. They take him from us down to the 2nd floor, give him shots, bring him back, and go, now this might make him get a fever and a little bit sick. And so we take him home to our hotel moments after that.
The agency organizes a cab to send you home. So the cab's waiting, and they tell the cab driver where your hotel is so that you don't have to handle that, because it can be a little bit stressful, right, when you have your little one in your hand. And so we're on the cab ride home, and there wasn't any music playing, and we were nervous about our cab driver because adoption in Korea is not always looked upon with approval. But he approvingly looked at us through his rearview mirror and kind of grinned and understood what was going on. And then he started to hum How Great Thou Art. And he hummed it for the whole 20-minute drive home. I think it took everything in Ben's power not to just sing it with him. But it was just another amazing confirmation that we were where we were supposed to be. And it's because of God's goodness.
Yeah, I mean, since the beginning, I mean, thinking about how much God's hand has been through everything, and though there's been really hard times and really tough struggles, there's never been a moment where God wasn't affirming that this is right. There was never a moment we said, did we really go the right journey? Did we really hear God clearly? Did we really make the right choice? Because all along the way, even when it was setbacks, we were able to see like this confirmation from God. And that was just the ultimate one, to be able to ride in that taxi cab and just have a man who didn't know us, didn't know our story, give God praise for our family. I mean, it was just another of many confirmations of how good God is to us.
And then we take him up to our hotel room, and we're just so excited to be parents, but also with very limited exposure to toddlers before this. So we let him toddle around on the floor, and he, coming from a foster home with no furniture, was very amused with the couches in the hotel. And so he crawls up on the couch, and we're just watching from across the room, and he's so cute. And then he stands up right on the couch, and then he just walks straight off of it and face plants on the coffee table. And I just thought, we're nailing it. We're really nailing it. That was horrible. But there we go. That's how it started.
Yeah. So coming into this journey with our family, Kai had experienced loss, lots of loss in his life. And, so when he saw us, he saw really fun, loving, great people. But the idea of permanency maybe wasn't fully there. And so we had to gain his trust.
I'm excited and I'm nervous and I'm anxious and I'm ready. I'm a little shaky. Can't decide whether to cry or throw up. You throw up and I'll cry. Go that way.
I'm feeling excited.
Good.
For them, they deserve it, and so does Kai. So I'm excited.
I feel good. I really hadn't known them that long, but they said there's going to be refreshments afterwards, and that's really why I'm here. And something about a child.
Since we've come home, it's been a crazy journey. We've had adventures, we've had tears, we've had celebrations. We've been through a lot together as a family.
Totally overwhelmed. I did not expect this many people to be here. I feel very loved.
Yeah. Was Kai good on the plane, or was it?
He was horrible.
15-hour one, he was horrible for about 3/4 of it.
Yeah.
The last flight he was good, but it was only 45 minutes, so that's okay. But we made it. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
Kai's home.
Come home, Kai is no more.
Kai came home.
Kai came home.
We taught each other to love in capacities we didn't know and to grow. And here we are 2 years later, and it's beautiful. We have a funny, smart, mischievous little boy who brings just so much joy to our lives. And it just makes me think we could have missed this.
So where do we go from here? We honestly believe that Kai has no limits. Like, that we are going to leverage everything that we have, everything that God's given us, every bit of knowledge and wisdom, in order to remove the barriers that can be before him, so that he can do greater things and continue this kingdom advancing legacy that we're trying to build. And so we're excited. We're excited to journey with him. We're excited to cheer him on. We're excited to parent him. We're excited about what's in store for him. And we're excited about what's in store for our family. You see, because God continues to affirm us and confirm his marks in our life, and he's doing it now, as we just got a phone call that Kai has a sister, a biological sister in Korea, and we've been given the privilege to adopt her as well. So hang tight, the adventure really is just beginning.